Welcome to Life Stories, where the people we love most can sometimes hurt us the deepest, and the ones we least expect can become our greatest reason to survive. He was a quiet nurse working night shifts, just trying to hold his world together. She was the woman who lit up every room, until one night she never came home. What followed wasn't just grief, it was betrayal, silence, and a secret no one saw coming. What if your daughter held the last message from the woman you lost, and it changed everything you believed about love, family, and forgiveness? Stay with us, because this story will break your heart, rebuild it, and make you question where true strength really comes from. Now, let's go back to where it all began. No one ever plans to fall apart in the fluorescent silence of a hospital break room at 3:47 a.m., but that's exactly where Noah Whitman found himself. Elbows on the table, hands gripping a half-empty coffee cup, trying not to think about how many lives he'd held in his hands that night, or how many he'd watched slip away. Outside, the wind lashed against the windows of Greenview Medical Center, and somewhere in the pediatric ward, a child whimpered in sleep. He'd been a nurse for 14 years, head nurse for 6, by all accounts, steady, reliable. The guy everyone called when the newborn stopped breathing, or when a family needed to hear that their mother didn't make it, but that she didn't suffer. Noah delivered pain like poetry, soft-spoken, direct, devastating, and he never cried. Not at work, not ever. But lately, something was cracking. The nightmares were back, not the usual stress dreams. These were worse. Bloody sidewalks, screaming. A woman's voice saying his name over and over until it broke into silence. Ayana's voice. The memory of her death came in flashes. The last voicemail she left, cheerful, hopeful. "I'll be home in an hour. Kiss Lila for me." She never made it back. The police called it a hate crime. 3 men. Knives, slurs hurled like stones. They were caught, tried, and then walked out of the courtroom after a slap-on-the-wrist sentence with smirks on their faces. One of them winked at Noah as he passed. He'd once believed in justice. Now all he believed in was his daughter. Lila. She was 11 now, with Ayana's bold eyes and his quiet sadness. She wrote stories. Long, beautiful stories that were somehow too wise for someone who still needed help tying her shoes a few years ago. One of them, The Girl on the Clouds, had been published when she was just 9. It made her famous, made their lives easier and harder. At school, other parents whispered. Some didn't whisper. "She's just a kid riding on a tragedy. Her dad's milking the sympathy. No way a child writes that on her own." Lila knew. She always knew. And Noah hated himself for not knowing how to protect her from words, from the weight of her own brilliance. Tonight, as he sat in that sterile break room, Lila was sleeping in the staff lounge down the hall, curled up in her favorite hoodie with her latest manuscript tucked under one arm. She'd insisted on staying the night with him. "So I can feel safe," she'd said. Safe from what? The world? From their family? Noah hadn't spoken to his parents in 9 years. Not since Ayana's funeral. Not since his mother told him she hoped the child didn't inherit the worst of her background. Not since his father looked at Lila for the first time and said nothing at all. That silence had been louder than any insult. But 2 days ago, everything shifted. His mother called. Her voice on the line was older, brittle. "Noah, we want to see you. You and Lila. Thanksgiving. Let's not waste more time." He almost hung up. Almost said, "Time wasted itself the day you refused to hold my daughter." But then he glanced over at Lila, who was sitting on the floor, colouring dragons with violet wings and wearing Ayana's old scarf. And he hesitated. Maybe, just maybe, his daughter deserved to know the people who should have been her grandparents. Maybe forgiveness, however painful, was part of healing. He said yes, and now he couldn't sleep. The break room clock ticked. Suddenly a soft knock echoed from the hallway. Noah looked up. Dr. Patel, the attending on call, peeked in. "Your daughter's awake," she said gently. "She's asking for you." When he returned to the staff lounge, Lila was sitting cross-legged on the couch, her face pale, eyes too serious for a child her age. "Dad," she whispered, "do you really think they've changed?" Noah crouched beside her. "I don't know." She reached for his hand. "You're scared." It wasn't a question. He nodded. "I had a dream," Lila said, eyes unfocused. "Mom was there. She told me to be careful, that someone's lying. Noah froze. Who's lying, Lila? She hesitated. I don't know, but in the dream, Mom was crying. For a second, the room felt colder. Noah had long stopped believing in signs, but something about the way Lila looked at him, firm, fearless, yet still holding on to a child's intuition, sent a shiver down his spine. Maybe the past wasn't done with them yet. Maybe the real danger wasn't out there in the world, but waiting behind a familiar door. What would you do if your child warned you with a dream and you wanted to believe them? Can family ever truly change, or do some wounds never heal? In 3 days, they would drive to Arlington. And nothing, not even the love between father and daughter, could prepare them for what waited behind that red brick door. The drive to Arlington was quiet, save for the soft rustle of Lila's notebook pages in the passenger seat. She wrote as she always did, head tilted, brow furrowed in quiet concentration, her pen moving in short bursts like her thoughts were too urgent to wait for grammar. Noah kept his eyes on the road, hands tight on the wheel. Every passing mile made his chest feel tighter, as if the closer they got, the harder it became to breathe. The last time he'd been to that house, he had left with Ayana's name echoing in the silence and a daughter swaddled in the back seat, unaware that the family she was born into had chosen to turn their faces away. Now, 11 years later, he was returning not as a son, but as a man carved by loss and rebuilt by love. They pulled into the driveway just after noon. The house hadn't changed. Still the same red brick, the same perfectly trimmed hedges, the American flag limp on its pole in the cold November air. But something about it felt smaller now. Or maybe it was just that Noah no longer looked at it with a child's eyes. His mother answered the door with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Noah," she said, reaching out. He let her hug him stiffly. "Lila," she added, kneeling awkwardly. "My, you've grown." Lila gave a small, polite smile, but Noah noticed the way she held her notebook tighter, her other hand finding his instinctively. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon, turkey, and something else, something stale. The kind of scent that comes from years of pretending nothing ever went wrong. Julian and Emily were already there with their kids, who ran past Lila without a second glance. There were presents piled near the fireplace. Lila received one small wrapped box. Inside was a plastic necklace, clearly re-gifted. She looked up at Noah but said nothing. The table was set with care, crystal glasses, polished silverware, but the conversation was brittle. Julian talked about real estate. Emily showed photos of her daughter in ballet class. Noah listened, nodding occasionally, offering nothing. No one asked Lila about her writing. Then came dessert. Noah noticed his mother glancing at Lila's hair, her skin. Her tone was sweet, but there was something rehearsed in her praise. "So gifted," she said. "You must have gotten that from your father." She didn't say Ayana's name, not once. And then it came. His father, usually quiet, looked across the table at Noah and said, "You know, there are scholarships out there for girls like Lila. She could get ahead with the right angle. Mixed heritage stories are popular these days." The words hit like a slap. Noah felt heat rise to his face. Lila went still beside him. "She's not an angle," Noah said, voice flat but dangerous. "She's a child. She's my daughter." His father raised an eyebrow. "I'm just saying, we've seen how successful she is. Maybe it's time to think smart about it. Think legacy." Legacy. That word twisted in Noah's gut. Was that what this was? A reclamation project? They'd turned their backs for a decade, and now that Lila was known, now that there was press and publishers and maybe money, they wanted in? Noah stood up slowly. The room fell silent. "Do you want to know what legacy means to me?" he asked. "It means not letting your granddaughter be treated like a footnote. It means saying her mother's name without flinching. It means showing up when it mattered, not now, when cameras might." His mother opened her mouth, but Noah didn't let her speak. "You made your choice when you refused to come to Ayana's funeral. When you never sent a card, never asked if I was eating, or if your granddaughter had clothes. You've had 11 years to reach out. 11 years. But now that she's in People magazine, you want a seat at the table?" No one said anything. He looked down at Lila. She was trembling slightly, but holding her chin high, her mother's fire in her eyes. He turned to leave. But before he reached the door, his mother spoke. "Noah, wait. There's something we didn't tell you." He stopped. She hesitated. Ayana came to see us before she died. Just once. She wanted to reconcile. Noah turned, his face unreadable. "She asked us to try," she said. Said she didn't want Lila to grow up without knowing her grandparents. She cried. She said she was afraid she wouldn't be around much longer. We said no. The room felt like it tilted. Noah's voice was quiet. "You're telling me she reached out to you, and you turned her away?" His mother nodded, eyes damp now but still not ashamed. "We thought we were protecting you from what this would mean." For a long moment, Noah said nothing. Then he looked at Lila, who had gone pale. "I think," he said finally, "you've mistaken silence for protection, and cruelty for care." He opened the door. Lila followed, her fingers locked around his. They drove home in silence until Lila whispered, "She tried, Dad. Mom tried." And Noah, gripping the wheel, replied, "She always did." If you were in Noah's place, could you ever forgive them for turning away the woman you loved, especially when it was her final act of grace? But what neither of them knew yet was that Ayana had left behind more than memories. She had left behind a secret that would change everything they thought they knew. The letter arrived 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, postmarked from a small legal office in Charlotte, North Carolina. Noah found it buried under medical bills and Lila's school newsletters. It was addressed to Mr. Noah Whitman and Miss Lila Whitman. The handwriting was unfamiliar. He almost tossed it aside, assuming it was some fan mail misdirected, but something about the weight of the envelope made him pause. He opened it cautiously. Inside was a folded letter and a sealed envelope with Ayana's name in delicate cursive. Noah's hands trembled as he unfolded the note. The letter was from Ayana's former lawyer. It explained that 6 months before her death, Ayana had prepared a series of letters to be delivered only if certain conditions were met. Letters written in case she never came home one night. She'd entrusted them to a firm far from home, knowing that grief sometimes causes the people we love to lose sight of the truth. And now, almost a decade later, the final letter had surfaced. Because someone, Noah didn't know who, had gone back to that law office and asked the lawyer to do what Ayana would have wanted. The sealed envelope bore only one word in Ayana's handwriting, for Lila. Noah sat on the couch for over an hour, the letter untouched in his lap. Lila was upstairs, humming as she scribbled down ideas for her next book. He thought of Ayana's voice, the cadence of her laugh, the way she once whispered to him in bed that she felt like she was running out of time, but didn't want to scare him by saying so aloud. Finally he stood, walked upstairs, and knocked gently on Lila's door. She looked up from her desk, eyes wide. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Noah said softly. "But this came for you." She held the envelope in her hands like it might shatter. "Is it really from her?" "I think so," he said. Lila didn't open it right away. She took it to the window, sat cross-legged on the floor in a pool of sunlight, and stared at it like it might answer a question she hadn't dared ask until now. Then, with slow fingers, she broke the seal. Noah watched her face, watched the way her lips trembled, then firmed. Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't cry. Not until the end. When she finally looked up at him, her voice was soft. She knew everything I'd feel, and she loved me through it anyway. "What did she say?" Noah asked gently. Lila handed him the letter. Ayana's words were warm, full of imagery and hope, but also heartbreakingly honest. She spoke to her daughter like she was already grown. "If you're reading this, it means the world didn't let me stay," she wrote. "But don't let that stop you from becoming who you're meant to be. You're not just the product of love. You are love." But there was something more. Ayana told Lila about that final visit to Noah's parents. She hadn't gone for forgiveness. She'd gone to deliver a second letter, one they never opened. A letter Ayana wrote to Noah. A goodbye. A confession. She'd known she was in danger, not just from the world, but from something growing inside her. A shadow on her scans she hadn't told him about. She didn't want to weigh him down with fear. She thought there was more time. But then came that night, and time ran out in a different way. "I thought I'd have years to tell you everything," she wrote. "But if I didn't, I wanted you to know that I was never afraid of death. I was afraid of leaving you, of not being there when our daughter learned how to walk, or when she asked why she looked different from her classmates. But I believe in you, Noah. I believed in the way you held my hand in silence, in the way you listened without needing to speak. I knew, if I couldn't stay, that you would raise her into something fierce and gentle and bright." When he finished reading, Noah couldn't breathe. For all these years, he'd held on to anger, rage at the men who killed her, rage at his family, rage at a universe that ripped her away without warning. But Ayanna had known her time might be short. She had made peace with it, and she had trusted him to carry her light forward. That wasn't a burden. It was the highest kind of love. He looked at Lila, who was now sitting quietly, her knees tucked to her chest. "She left a part for you too," she whispered. "She said she'd seen something in you that you hadn't yet, that even after she was gone, I'd help you find it." "What did she mean?" he asked. Lila smiled faintly. "That the world needs more stories, and not just from me." It took Noah a moment to understand. She reached for her backpack, pulled out a notebook he hadn't seen before, and handed it to him. Inside were pages, hundreds of them, his stories, not hers, things he had said in passing, stories of patience, of grief, of hope, of small moments, written down in Lila's neat, looping script. "I've been collecting them," she said. "I think Mom knew you'd be too humble to write your own, so I did." Noah's hands trembled again, but this time not from fear. That night, for the first time since Ayanna's death, he sat at the kitchen table, opened his laptop and began to write. Not for work, not for obligation, but to speak, to remember, to heal. Ayanna had left them a goodbye, but Lila had given him something else. A beginning. What part of this story stayed with you the most and why? If you loved this story, comment 100 below. We'd love to know, which country are you watching from? Share this with someone who believes in love, family, and the power of stories. Thank you for watching Life Stories.